I sent a letter to my estranged mom until a stranger handed me her answer. Chapter 1. The Letter. The Philadelphia winter bit at my fingers as I stood frozen in front of the blue mailbox on the corner of Walnut Street. My breath formed small clouds in the frigid February air while I stared at the sealed envelope clutched in my trembling hand. The name and address written in my careful handwriting seemed to stare back at me accusingly. Eleanor Matthews, 237 Maple Avenue, Pittsburgh, PA 10. Years. That's how long it had been since I'd spoken to my mother. 10 birthdays, 10 Christmases, 10 Mother's Days that passed in silence. All because of a stupid argument that had spiraled out of control when I was 22 and thought I knew everything. Now at 32, I wasn't so sure anymore. Hey, if you're enjoying this story so far, hit that subscribe button. I share stories like this one every week that'll make you think about your own relationships. I took a deep breath and dropped the letter into the mailbox before I could change my mind. The metallic clang as it hit the bottom felt oddly final, like the period at the end of a difficult sentence. I'd been drafting this letter for weeks, crumpling up versions and starting over, unsure how to bridge a decade of silence. A phone call seemed too immediate, too raw. At least with a letter, I could carefully choose my words. Dear Mom, it began. Simple, direct, terrifying. The wind picked up as I walked back to my apartment, cutting through my wool coat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably work. I'd been distracted lately, and my boss had noticed. How could I explain that after 10 years, I was finally trying to reconnect with my mother? That the weight of unresolved hurt and stubborn pride had become too heavy to carry? The argument that had driven us apart seemed so insignificant now, but at the time, it had felt like everything. I'd just graduated college and had been offered a job in Philadelphia, a dream opportunity that would take me away from Pittsburgh, away from the small apartment where Mom had raised me alone after Dad left. She hadn't taken it well. You're abandoning me just like your father did, she'd said, the words like daggers. I'm not Dad. I'm trying to build my own life, I'd shouted back. Words turned to accusations. Old wounds reopened. I said things I didn't mean. She said things she couldn't take back. And then I'd packed my bags and left, vowing never to return. Pride is a powerful thing. For years, I convinced myself I was right to stay away, that she needed to apologize. First, that I was better off without the drama. But lately, something had changed. Maybe it was seeing my friends with their parents at holidays. Maybe it was turning the same age Mom was when she had me. Whatever it was, I couldn't ignore the emptiness anymore. If you've ever had a family rift that seemed impossible to repair, drop a comment below. What made you finally reach out, or what's holding you back? Back in my apartment, I hung up my coat and glanced at the framed photo on my bookshelf, the only picture of Mom I'd kept out. It was from my high school graduation, both of us smiling, her arm around my shoulders. We looked happy then, before everything fell apart. It's done, I said to my empty apartment. Now we wait. But as I went through the motions of my evening routine, heating up leftover pasta, checking work emails, half watching a Netflix show, I couldn't shake the feeling of both dread and hope. What if she didn't want to hear from me? What if she'd moved on with her life? Or worse, what if she responded with the same anger that had characterized our last conversation? As I drifted off to sleep that night, I remembered something Mom used to say when I was little. Time doesn't heal wounds, Jamie. People do. Maybe, after all these years, it was finally time to start healing. Chapter 2. The Unexpected Visitor 5. Days after mailing the letter, I was just settling in for another Saturday morning with coffee and the crossword puzzle, when a firm knock interrupted the silence of my apartment. I wasn't expecting anyone, and delivery people usually buzzed from downstairs. Curious, I peered through the peephole to see an older man I didn't recognize, gray-haired, wearing a worn brown jacket, and holding something in his hand. Cautiously, I opened the door. "Can I help you?" The man looked tired with deep lines around his eyes that spoke of recent stress. "Are you James Matthews?" His voice was gruff but not unkind. "Yes," I replied, a strange feeling of unease settling in my stomach. He held out what he was carrying, my letter. The same envelope I'd dropped in the mailbox 5 days ago, now slightly wrinkled but unmistakably mine. My heart dropped. "My name is Robert Keene. I'm your mother's neighbor," he said. "May I come in? I'm afraid I have some difficult news." The next few minutes passed in a blur. I remember guiding him to my couch, offering coffee that he declined, and then sitting across from him as he explained why he was there. If you're feeling the tension building in this story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss how it ends. Stories like these remind us how fragile our connections can be. "Your mother had a stroke 3 days ago," he said, his weathered hands turning my unopened letter over and over. "I found her when I went to check why she hadn't picked up her newspaper. She's in the hospital now, critical condition," the room seemed to tilt. "A stroke? But she's only 57, I stammered, as if age could somehow protect someone from tragedy. "The doctors say she's stable, but she's in a coma," Robert continued. "When I went to her house to get some of her things, I found this letter on the hall table. It had just been delivered. Since there was no other contact information at her house, and the hospital couldn't reach any family members." He trailed off, extending the letter back to me. I took it numbly, staring at my mother's name and address in my own handwriting. 3 days ago. If I had only sent it sooner. If I had just picked up the phone instead. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this," Robert said gently, "but I thought you should know. She's at Pittsburgh General, room 418. I nodded, unable to form words as a decade of regret came crashing down on me. The letter that was supposed to be a beginning now felt like it might be too late. "How did you find me?" I finally managed to ask. "Your return address," he said simply. "I drove here today. Eleanor, your mother, she's mentioned you over the years. She never said much, but I could tell she missed you. She missed me." The words pierced through my carefully constructed defenses. For 10 years, I'd told myself she was probably fine without me, that she'd moved on just as I had tried to do. But now, faced with the possibility of losing her forever, I realized how much time we'd wasted. What was your most regrettable moment of pride? Comment below if you've ever realized too late that your stubbornness cost you something important. "I should have called," I whispered, more to myself than to Robert. "I should have done this years ago." "Maybe," Robert agreed, "but you wrote the letter eventually. That counts for something." As he stood to leave, he placed a kind hand on my shoulder. "She's a fighter, your mom. Always has been. If anyone can pull through this, it's Eleanor." After he left, I sat motionless, staring at the unopened letter in my hands. The words inside suddenly seemed so inadequate, so small compared to what I needed to say now. I had crafted them so carefully, trying to explain my side, to take tentative steps toward reconciliation. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was getting to Pittsburgh. Today. Chapter 3. The Hospital Room. The 4-hour drive from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh was a blur of highway signs and churning thoughts. I'd thrown some clothes into a duffel bag, called my boss to explain the emergency, and hit the road without a clear plan beyond reaching my mother's side. Pittsburgh General Hospital loomed large and imposing as I pulled into the visitor parking lot. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, reluctant to let go. What would I find inside? What would I say to a woman who couldn't hear me? How do you apologize for 10 years of silence to someone in a coma? This is the moment we all fear, realizing we might be too late to make things right. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps me share more stories that remind us what truly matters in life. The hospital corridors were a maze of sterile white and mint green. The smell of disinfectant hung in the air as I followed the signs to the 4th floor. Room 418. I paused outside the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then, taking a deep breath, I pushed it open. The steady beep of monitors greeted me, and there she was, my mother, looking smaller than I remembered, lost among white, sheets and medical equipment. Her dark hair, now streaked with more gray than I recalled, framed a face that seemed peaceful despite the circumstances. A thin tube ran under her nose and an IV dripped steadily into her arm. "Mom," I whispered, the word feeling foreign on my tongue after so many years of not speaking it aloud. I moved closer, carefully taking her hand in mine. It was warm but limp, unresponsive to my touch. Up close, I could see the lines that time had etched around her eyes and mouth, some from laughter, others from worries I hadn't been there to share. "Mr. Matthews?" A voice from behind startled me. I turned to see a doctor in a white coat, clipboard in hand. "I'm Dr. Patel. I've been overseeing your mother's care." We shook hands, and she explained my mother's condition in gentle but clinical terms. The stroke had affected the left side of her brain. She was stable but unresponsive. The next 48 hours would be critical. They were doing everything they could. "Has she been alone this whole time?" I asked, the guilt washing over me anew. "Her neighbor, Mr. Keene, has visited daily," Dr. Patel replied, "and the nurses spend extra time with her. Studies show that coma patients can sometimes hear what's happening around them, so we encourage talking to her." After the doctor left, I pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, still holding Mom's hand. "What do you say after 10 years of silence? How do you compress a decade of life into words that might not even be heard?" "I got your neighbor's message," I began awkwardly. "I came as soon as I heard. I wrote you a letter. It's kind of ridiculous now, all the things I thought were so important to say." The monitors beeped steadily in response. "I was coming. Back, Mom. I was trying to find my way back to you. I wish I hadn't waited so long." The words came easier then, tumbling out in a flood of memories and confessions. I told her about my job, my apartment, my friends. I apologized for leaving the way I did, for the harsh words, for the stubborn pride that kept me away. I reminisced about childhood memories, the chocolate chip pancakes she made on Sunday mornings, the way she'd sing off-key to the radio, how she never missed a single baseball game, even when she was exhausted from working double shifts. If this story is bringing up emotions for you, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had a moment when you realized life is too short for pride and grudges? As evening settled over the hospital, a nurse came in to check vitals and adjust equipment. "You should get some rest," she advised, noticing my red-rimmed eyes. "There's a hotel across the street. She'll be here in the morning." But I couldn't leave. Not now. Not when every moment felt precious and precarious. So I stayed, dozing occasionally in the uncomfortable chair, waking to every change in the rhythm of the monitors or shift in the hospital's night sounds. In those quiet hours, watching my mother's chest rise and fall with each breath, I felt the weight of time lost. 10 years, nearly a third of my life, gone because neither of us could swallow our pride and reach out sooner. "I'm sorry," I whispered again and again. "I'm here now. I'm not leaving." Outside the window, Pittsburgh's lights twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there was my mother's house, where my letter had arrived too late, where a decade of birthdays and holidays had passed without me, where she had lived her life, perhaps waiting for a call that never came. As dawn broke over the city skyline, I made a promise to her and to myself. If we got a second chance, I wouldn't waste it. No more pride, no more stubbornness, just the time we had left, however much that might be. Chapter 4. The awakening day turned to night and back to day again. I left my mother's side only for brief moments, to grab coffee from the cafeteria or to splash water on my face in the bathroom down the hall. Robert Keane visited each afternoon, bringing fresh flowers and quiet companionship. He filled in the gaps of my mother's life that I had missed. Her promotion at work 3 years ago, her volunteer work at the local library, the neighborhood barbecues she hosted each summer. She always set an extra place, he mentioned casually. On the second day, every gathering, every holiday. When I asked her about it once, she just said, just in case. Just in case I came home. The knowledge was both comforting and devastating. On the third day, I was reading aloud from the dog-eared paperback I'd found in my mother's purse, a mystery novel with a receipt marking her place. When I felt it, a slight pressure against my hand, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. I looked up from the book. Mom. There it was again, her fingers weakly curling around mine. My heart leaped into my throat as I pressed the call button for the nurse. Her hand moved, I explained when the nurse hurried in. She squeezed my hand. If you're feeling the emotion of this moment, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps me continue sharing stories that remind us of the power of forgiveness and second chances. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Doctors came and went, performing tests and checking responses. They were cautiously optimistic. Movement was a good sign, but they warned me not to expect too much too quickly. Recovery from a stroke was a marathon, not a sprint. It was late afternoon when her eyelids fluttered open. Just for a moment at first, then longer. Her gaze was unfocused, confused. But then her eyes found mine, and I saw the moment of recognition. Dawn, Jamie. Her voice was barely audible, raspy from disuse. I'm here, Mom, I said, tears streaming down my face. I'm right here. She tried to speak again, but the words wouldn't come. Frustration flashed across her face. Don't try to talk, I soothed. Just rest. I'm not going anywhere. The doctor had warned me that speech might be affected by the stroke. That recovery would be a long road with physical therapy and speech therapy. That some things might never be quite the same. But in that moment, none of that mattered. She was awake. She knew who I was. We had a chance. Over the next few days, her strength gradually returned. Words came slowly at first, then in halting sentences. The right side of her body was weaker than the left, but the therapists were optimistic about her recovery. On the 5th day, as I helped her with her lunch, cutting the hospital meatloaf into manageable bites, she reached for my hand. The letter, she said, her speech still slightly slurred but clearer than the day before. Did you send a letter? I nodded, surprised she remembered. I did. Just before all this happened. What did it say? She asked. I looked down at our intertwined hands, hers thin and papery, mine strong and steady. It said I was sorry, I replied softly. That I missed you. That I was ready to talk, if you were. A tear slipped down her cheek. 10 years, she whispered. So long. Too long, I agreed. But we're here now. Have you ever received a second chance you didn't think you deserved? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else find the courage to reach out. As weeks passed, Mom grew stronger. The hospital room gave way to a rehabilitation facility, where determined therapists helped her relearn tasks that had once been automatic. I took a leave of absence from work, rented a small apartment nearby, and spent every day by her side, helping with exercises, reading aloud, or simply sitting together in companionable silence. We talked about the past, not just the argument that had separated us, but the good times too. We spoke of the future, tentative plans for when she was well enough to go home. And gradually, The decade-long gap between us narrowed, bridged by shared meals, inside jokes with the nurses, and the quiet understanding that comes from weathering a crisis together. "I was too proud," she admitted one evening as we watched the sunset from the rehab center's garden. "Should have called you." "We both were," I replied, adjusting the blanket around her shoulders. "But that's behind us now." 2 months after the stroke that nearly took her life, and inadvertently gave us back our relationship, Mum was finally cleared to go home. As I helped her through the front door of her house on Maple Avenue, I noticed something on the hall table, my letter still unopened. "Do you want to read it now?" I asked, picking it up. She shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "Don't need to," she said. "Got the real thing instead." That night, as I settled into the guest room that would be mine until Mom was fully independent again, I thought about how close we'd come to missing this chance. How a stroke, terrible as it was, had accomplished what pride had prevented for 10 years. Before I close this story, I want to thank you all for listening. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to my channel for more stories that remind us of what truly matters. And if you're holding on to pride or anger that's keeping you from someone you love, remember, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Make that call. Send that text. Write that letter. Don't wait for a stranger to bring you the news that it's too late. I took out my phone and scrolled through recent pictures. Mom smiling weakly from her hospital bed, both of us giving thumbs up after a successful therapy session, her triumphant face when she walked unassisted for the first time. These were moments that almost never happened. Outside, rain began to fall softly on the Pittsburgh streets. In the next room, I could hear Mom's gentle snoring, the most reassuring sound in the world. We had lost 10 years, but we had found each other again, and this time, neither of us was letting go.